Hello and welcome to ET India Boardroom. On this panel, we will be discussing the question, is talent crunch the next big hurdle for Indian startups? We have a great set of panelists today from both the operating and investing side. And our panelists today are Abhishek Gupta, who is Chief Customer Officer at CleverTap, Deepanshu Manchanda, who is founder and CEO at ZappFresh, and Vinit Bhansali, who is Senior Vice President at Orios Venture Partners. So to start things off, I'd actually like to test the premise of this question somewhat by asking each of you to share your thoughts on, are Indian startups actually facing a talent crunch? And if so, what in your opinions is driving it? So maybe Abhishek, maybe let me turn to you first and get your thoughts on that.
The talent crunch, or the challenge in terms of acquiring the talent and retaining the talent, is very real actually. So the problem statement that you said, Gustaf, is very, very real. It's something that we are experiencing in our daily lives. They're really like what has happened over there has always been demand for talent. There has always been high demand for top talent, and companies have always paid a premium to go and get the talent. But what has happened over the last couple of years is we have seen two trends happening in parallel. On the one side, we have seen startups raising a huge amount of capital, which means that they've got a huge need to go ahead and build the product, the businesses, and for which they need the talent. On the second side, we have seen another trend, which is because of COVID, because of the pandemic, the employees ended up experiencing a totally different kind of work environment. At which point, in some of these cases, they got disconnected from the overall mission statement of the company. And in the process, they went out seeking new opportunities for themselves, where they could further their career, they could further the interest, they could learn new skills. And therefore, what has happened is today, hiring talent and retaining talent is a big part of the job at all levels, and we are seeing it all across, both within a company and with the customers that we work with, primarily in the consumer tech space.
And Deepanshu and Vinit, anything to add from your sides? Are you seeing the same in your specific sectors, industries? Any thoughts on the question?
Yeah, I mean, I think talent crunch has always been a major deterrent for growth for startups. When we started our journey, we faced it. As of today, it's still existing. It's growing as we are moving ahead with so much capital flowing in the companies. There are a lot of employees who are looking for brighter opportunities and getting more ambitious day by day. So that I believe is a posing threat to the startup industry as a whole, and we should be looking at making it more comforting for employees, to stay connected to a vision together, and maybe contribute to a larger purpose, rather than looking at opportunistic kind of ways to build their career. So I think as a whole, there is a lot of challenge in engineering and various other departments in the company, and how we address those challenges are very specific to each and every company, but they're there as a whole, and everybody's tackling that problem in their own way. One thing what we do is, despite of giving them more ownership about the roles which they are in, that definitely excites the workforce to do more and be more accountable and more responsible. That helps them stay the course and look at doing delivery at a long-term level. So that's what it is.
And Vinit, I think you have a bit of a unique perspective as well as a sort of early stage investor. I think you get to see this play out across multiple portfolio companies. Is this something that you're seeing happening from the very early stage of a sort of startup's growth, or is it more a problem for more late stage companies?
Absolutely. I agree with what Abhishek and Deepanshu said. They are the operators. I'm not an operator anymore. But we do have a bunch of startups in our portfolio. Everyone is scrambling. The founders are scrambling. They are making their investors scramble. This isn't anything new. The top 5% of talent has always been in demand, and the smartest founders know that 2 high-quality developers are worth 20 developers with maybe a little bit lesser experience or expertise. And I think all the other founders who didn't already know this are learning this lesson real quick. One thing I would say is this is just another, critical, urgent, everything is burning item in the list of the early stage founders. They just have to now solve for this as well.
And Vinit, you touched on an interesting point where I think you just said getting 2 good developers is worth 20 good ones. And I think it's safe to say that a good developer is worth, her or his weight in gold. Maybe turning to Deepanshu and Abhishek, do you see this being primarily a challenge in engineering and product, or does this span the entire sort of organization when it comes to a talent crunch? Let's say into, for example, commercial roles as well. Maybe Deepanshu, let me start with you.
I see across the departments. Engineering gets a little more limelight because of the high cost of salaries in that department, which is rising day by day. The other departments are also catching up. So I believe there is across the board, whether it is customer care or whether it is operations or business development, quality talent is not short of options. Irrespective of whichever department you look at, but it's also about what is a critical function to the organization. And for some, if there is a core technology product, technology as a service or software as a service is, if you look at that, then they have engineering as a main department to really contribute, work at. For players like us, operations plays a key role. So we look at that as an important department, which has been not easy to fix when it comes to getting the right leader on board, and then creating that hierarchy as we grow forward. Because what we see is that the engagement part, the employee engagement part, the harmony alongside the productivity is equally important. When you have large workforces, there are a lot of challenges and complexities which a startup founder has to manage. So learning and maneuvering yourself out of that, and staying top of it with different set of problems and challenges coming from different departments, and creating that cohesiveness is becoming more challenging because of opportunities being out there. B, they're getting more demanding in terms of work-life balance, being hybrid. So a clutch of challenges is what we believe has always been there, and it's getting more and more day by day. So we're still looking at various ways to solve it. And of course we want to do better also for the employees' welfare, but we have our own challenges to basically work around that part.
Thanks, Deepanshu. And Abhishek, maybe from your perspective as chief customer officer, looking more at, let's say, the professional services side, customer success side of the business, are you also finding talent to be a challenge in your world as well?
So good talent always have options, and they always had it. They have it now, perhaps a little bit more options at this point. And so I can talk about broadly as a company, but I can also talk from my team standpoint. So in my team, I've got both set of roles. I've got technical roles and I have commercial roles. Now, when it comes to acquiring talent and retaining them, I think we're seeing the challenges are there. Like if I compare it with the previous years, of course, in the last couple of years, the challenges have been much more. But there are some nuances that we are seeing. So for example, when it comes to retaining employees, we're seeing consistency between the technical and business roles. But the one area where we see like hiring for technical roles is very challenging is because the drop-off rate from the time people accept the offer to the time they join, that is much higher in the technical roles compared to the commercial roles. And so that is one thing that we have seen. But also what we are seeing is when it comes to commercial roles, a lot of time people are actually based in a location where they're closer to the customer, where they're already close, like it's their own location. They don't really have to move around, or they don't have to think that at some point they have to move around. So that also acts as a sort of a way to kind of for people to go and appreciate the opportunity they have and then pick it up and run with it. But broadly, if I look at our situation as a company, we are a tech company, and we have a whole lot of engineers, and we need a lot of engineers on an ongoing basis. So the overall impact has been significant in terms of going out to the market, trying and bringing the talent, make sure that they are really excited about the work they're doing, making sure that they're working on cutting edge technologies, making sure that they are actually able to learn and grow and build exciting careers with us. So that's an area where we are consciously investing energies, building processes, creating opportunities for people. And there is one more thing that I'll share, which is very interesting, since you spoke about the two roles. We have also created opportunities for people to move from sort of like if someone has been in a technical role, giving them an opportunity to move into a sort of a commercial role and moving people around in different functions. Because that basically gives people a lot more holistic experience across different functions where they learn a lot. And for us, it allows us to create leaders of tomorrow.
And maybe a somewhat related follow-up question, which is, there's certainly the sort of functional angle, but we are in a very different world today than we were 2-3 years ago in terms of, COVID and work from home. Has the work from home world made it easier or harder in your experience to find, identify, acquire, and sort of retain top talent?
Yeah, so I think this is a good question actually, because this is now multi-layered. Hiring and retaining are two different sides of the same coin. So the fact that people have been able to pick up an opportunity from where they are located today, that has definitely enabled hiring. So hiring is a little bit more easier from that standpoint. But what has happened is because of the virtual environment, the level of engagement that used to exist between the teams, between employer and employees, it's not so much there. So now retaining employees has become really, really hard because like sometimes when people come in young, they really need to be groomed. They need to be taken care of in a nice professional environment. And the virtual world does not necessarily allow those opportunities every time. So retaining employees definitely is much harder at this point.
Yeah, I second that thought, Gustaf. Basically, I think it's easier to hire across geographies. And we've hired some, few folks who are, even moving. So they keep moving to different states basis their own flexibilities and requirements. We as an organization don't mind that. We in fact promote being hybrid and being flexible because what I think is that people work more when we give them space. So it's a different level of motivation, different level of understanding which we have, and even if they are less engaged, but they're more enriched with the right work and the right role and responsibility, then they tend to be more responsible and accountable of what needs to be done. Otherwise, there are different type of people, but we think that being hybrid is a good thing, with some challenges in engagement, but the real guys stay.
Got it. And I guess embedded in the premise of the question is this a hurdle for Indian startups? So Vinit, I think again your perspective is welcome here because you see so many early stage companies and you sort of get to follow them through their growth trajectories. We've established there is a talent crunch. We've established that it sort of spans across functions. Where does this sort of land with startups? Is it in cost of growth, pace of growth? What challenges does it really present to Indian startups?
Answered another way, the founders who can crack tech hiring have a significant competitive advantage, right? Being able to come to an investor and be able to pitch that you have a ready network, maybe from people you went to college with or people you worked with at previous startups, or you were part of some deep tech meetups and hence you built those networks, is now actually a significant competitive advantage. And as investors, at least we do, when you're evaluating a team on various credentials, do they have an understanding of the domain? Do they have an understanding of the tech? We now actually filter to ensure that the founding team, the co-founders, have an ability to quickly build a team around them. Because you will otherwise see a founder who he or she has raised a couple of $1 million, right? Because they've got the right ACADs, they've got the right skill set. And now the money is sitting in the bank because they are unable to, get the team around them, right? And the product's going to suffer. So it's a reverse problem. And that's actually a filter that investors have begun applying.
And maybe a follow-up question for you as an investor: when you look at let's say, an early stage business plan, and does talent as let's say, a more constrained talent environment factor into how much capital you think a company will need, to growth projections? Do you see any sort of adjustment in the way you invest on the back of this sort of talent crunch, beyond what you just mentioned in terms of looking at talent acquisition as a competitive differentiator?
Gustaf, so one of the things that we now do is we advise startups on something as simple, especially early stage founders, on something as simple as why they need an ESOP pool, right? To people like us in the industry who are experienced, it's fairly natural. But a lot of early founders think an ESOP pool is something I need at a Series B or a Series C. And, we have to get them to come to terms saying that, hey, you got this money, but the talent isn't just going to come if you give them a higher, CTC, right? A higher compensation. You need to compensate them with ESOPs. So this is an example of how, we do work with founders to explain to them why this is important.
And maybe, Abhishek, let me turn to you with a question as well, which is, we'll talk in a second about what companies can do to improve how they acquire and retain talent. Do you think there's anything at more of a, let's call it, broader level, that either from an ecosystem standpoint that can be done to improve the availability of talent, or how we hire for startups in India?
Yeah, no, there is definitely a lot that can be done, because I think what we're really, one of the critical aspects, and this is a classic thing that happens with all hiring managers, is everyone wants to have talent that can be readily productive from day one. Like when you go about writing the spec, right? Everyone spends time writing the perfect spec, and we interview a whole lot of people to get the perfect candidate. But what we have to recognize that when we're trying to build a company, and when you're trying to build a company for the long run, you have to have a combination of talent. You have to have talent that can come and readily become productive, but you also have to have talent which basically can be groomed and can perform over a longer period of time. And so from an ecosystem standpoint, there is definitely a lot of opportunity to work on the second aspect, where industry can collaborate with institutions, whether it be in the training area, in the academic area, and make sure that individuals can be trained in the relevant skill set. So I'll give you an example, right? Like a lot of times, if you look at our engineering curriculum, what people learn, right? There's a lot of emphasis on, let's say, programming languages like Java, Python, etc., right? But suddenly a mobile tech company needs talent. You need someone who has experience of developing an Android application, an iOS application. And there's a gap that exists. And I think there is a tremendous opportunity to bridge that gap through better collaboration by making sure that what industry needs, that information is being disseminated to the broader ecosystem, and that collaboration happens. And then industry also, like employers such as ourselves, and we do that consciously, where we hire people knowing fully well that it would take us a certain amount of time to groom them, to help them succeed. And that helps us create a stronger workforce when we look at the medium to longer term time frame.
Very helpful, Abhishek. And maybe one thing I wanted to ask you, I think you've had a bit of an international perspective too, is we have seen, I don't think the talent problem is unique to India. We have seen it play out in other markets at various points in time. Are there any lessons we can pull from other markets, be it the US, Israel, Europe, in terms of how this plays out and where we end, or how we, let's call it, resolve this?
Thanks, Gustaf. I think that's a super pertinent question. Founders need to learn from every place they can. I've got a couple of interesting data points here, right? Everyone knows WhatsApp had a massive, exit to Facebook. It was $21 billion. What a lot of people don't know is that entire tech team was less than 50 people, right? Another company that had an IPO in the UK recently, Hims and Hers, had a total team of under 150 people on the date they went public, right? Now, what founders need to learn from this is work towards optimizing your tech talent and optimizing your product and making product decisions. So your go-to-market and your growth is not affected, but maybe you sort of figure out what features need to come in today, what features need to come in later. About 20 years ago, hardware was the pain point across the world, right? I mean, buying a server cost $1 bazillion in the US, in UK, in China, and in India. Today, thanks to cloud, that's not a problem anymore. But across geographies, talent is. And this problem is not going away. A decade ago, the Israeli government highlighted that there's a shortage of highly skilled computer science personnel. 10 years ago, this was a problem in Israel. In 2017, there was another article, with a headline saying, Israel startups complaining about tech talent crunch, right? So 2012, 2017, 5 years, nothing changed. This year, 2022, there's a Wired article, Israeli startups complaining about a tech talent crunch, right? So there's now a 10-year history, published history of tech talent in a geography like Israel. Now, sure, India has more geographic breadth. We're a larger country, more people, but that top 5% of tech talent is always going to be in demand. And we have to live with the fact that this is not going to change in the short to medium term. And there are other solutions, right, that founders need to put in. And combine this with the fact that an early stage founder in India is this year competing with 100+ unicorns for that same tech talent. Maybe 5 years ago, you were only competing with 10 unicorns, right? Big lesson is founders now, I think, should hire a full-time recruiter as one of their first 3 or 4 hires the moment they get even their first angel round in the bank.
I think that's super interesting, Vinit. I think actually getting an HR person, I think, has typically been associated, or HR maybe broadly, but or talent lead has always been, I think, regarded as something you do when you're a much larger company. But these days, I don't think you can maybe afford to wait. So I guess the analog suggests that the talent crunch is here to stay. It's a permanent state of affairs, not a short-term phenomenon. With that in mind, I guess companies have to adapt, and I think many are already. So, Deepanshu, let me turn to you. I guess you've been dealing with this challenge, like all of us have for some time. What have you seen? What have you maybe seen, or what have you maybe yourself implemented that has helped you sort of retain talent, acquire it, et cetera? What has worked? What hasn't worked? Some tips maybe for the founders out there looking to solve their talent challenges.
So I think I give them a lot of space in terms of the way they want to operate, a lot of independence and freedom to really work, across geographies, or whether it is with respect to role and responsibilities, the stuff they want to crack, and I also throw a lot of problems, within the teams to see who can really come up with the right solutions. That I think is a more learning, orientation, where they feel, really part of a bigger, opportunity than just being, given a small piece to solve in larger organizations. So particularly, folks who want to work on complex problems. So my focus has always been to spot those guys, rather than, something which already exists and they just want to scale it up. So a problem and solution orientation, and also freedom and space in terms of how they want to, work and what they want to do works almost all the time for me. And you have pros and cons in different set of leaderships, but I think this one is my style of working.
Abhishek, how about from your fund at CleverTap? What have you seen work as the organization has evolved? Yeah, I know you're distributed across multiple hubs, so I think you also have the challenge of distribution to deal with.
Yeah, no, definitely. We are based across, we have employees across the globe, but of course across multiple cities in India. But in terms of what we have been focusing on in terms of making sure that our employees are doing well, and we are able to basically provide talent the opportunity to succeed, we're really focusing on 3 things. One is people want to have a sense of purpose in what they're doing. That's really the first thing. And what we have done is during the course of this pandemic, at every possible opportunity, we have tried to get together with the people to make sure that we're sharing with them the purpose, the energy of all the things that we are doing, and making sure that what they do stacks up in the entire scheme of things. So we have taken every opportunity to ensure that employees know that what they're doing matters and how it matters. So the sense of purpose is there. The second part is there is a renewed emphasis on learning at this point in terms of learning, solving challenging problems and whatnot. And so people want they want to learn new things. They want to have some amount of diversity in the work they're doing. And they've been very conscious in making sure that people have that opportunity, whether it comes from role change, whether it comes from learning new skills or sponsoring additional things for them, right? Additional courses, mentorship, whatever. And the third area where we are really kind of intentional about is like in the days when your grocery can be delivered in 10 minutes, your food can be delivered in 10 minutes. We need to recognize that the talent expectations are also changing in terms of recognitions, promotions, and whatnot. So we have been very intentional in terms of recognizing and rewarding the top talent to make sure that they not only stay, but are able to contribute in a lot more meaningful manner.
Fantastic. And Vinit, maybe let me turn to you and ask the same question, but maybe let me add a dimension to it, which is in addition to what companies can do to help sort of, let's say, ameliorate the situation, what can investors do to help?
Great. Gustaf, I actually want to split this into two parts, if I may, right? I wear the hat of having been a founder for the first 16 years of my career, and I've only been an investor for 3 years, right? So, what one fix that, I see no one speaking about, right? Maybe in our own portfolio, maybe others who are talking about it on LinkedIn or on podcasts is, what are they doing to make their startups a better place to work at? Because everyone else is doing a lot of the same things, right? So while founders love to read books like Lean Startup and, 0 to 1, I implore founders, in fact, I challenge them to get out of their comfort zone and read books like Culture Code and maybe, $1 Trillion Coach, and understand what the top players of the game, when I say the top players, I'm talking Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, because they have had a tech hiring crunch between them for multiple decades now, right? What they have done to truly, accelerate past the pack, right, and get ahead of the race, get out of the comfort zone and, start learning, because this is not comfortable. Most founders are techies, and the obvious solution is a technical solution, right? Let's optimize or let's solve in a codified step-by-step manner. But get to these softer skills quicker, and don't wait to be a larger organization before culture is a conversation, right? Because at the end of the day, everyone can give or match the same CTC. So then what else can you do? And I think there are very few founders who will be able to do this right, and they'll have a huge competitive advantage. Sorry, didn't mean to take away from.
No, very helpful. And I guess in your other hat as an investor, is there anything that Orios does or that you think investors can do to help portfolio companies in this respect?
Absolutely. 3 things come to mind very clearly. Number one, the role of an investor becoming a Rolodex provider, right? And apologies to the younger audience who don't know what a Rolodex is, but maybe I'll explain it a different way. The role of an investor providing access to their contact list becomes even more critical, right? A lot of investors don't do this, or they don't do it actively, but I think it's time to do it actively. Even before the founder comes to you with a problem, you need to be able to anticipate this and make those connections. Second, I think investors, because they are more horizontal across so many startups, are the best place to showcase best practices and cross-pollinate ideas across their portfolio companies, right? A lot of investors, especially at Orios, we never invest in competing startups. So this cross-pollination becomes even more natural, right? Because the people you're talking to and you're learning from are not in the same space and competing with you. Thirdly, in the same line, is create opportunities and spaces for conversations between your senior founders in your portfolio and the younger founders in your portfolio, right? The guys who have gone from hiring the first 10, tech first 10 member tech team to people who are now trying to hire 100, right? They may be struggling at 100, but they definitely solved how to go from 0 to 10 people. So, and that opportunity and that space needs to be created by the investor. So don't wait for your founders to come and say, hey, can you connect me with this founder of a unicorn in your portfolio? Create those conversations, create those spaces. I'll leave it at that.
And maybe to round things off, Deepanshu, as a founder who's raised capital here, anything that your investors do that maybe Vinit hasn't mentioned, or that you think they can do more of to help you in this situation?
No, I agree with Vinit. I think, we haven't seen a lot of action in those directions, with our set of investors. They've been mostly passive investors who financially help you and then pull back and see you create magic. So I think, there is very limited engagement when it comes to cross learning and referencing and a knowledge sharing between their portfolio. I personally believe it's very easy to do for them, and it's highly productive. But somehow, for whatever reason, we haven't seen that happening. So I would have wished to see this coming from our set of guys, but unfortunately we haven't gotten that. So I think a lot of investors also need to pull up socks and help the founders now and get their hands dirty a little bit, if not too much, in solving the challenges of and they do have the capability also, but I think it's a matter of what priorities do they have, and what is their working style and investment thesis overall.
On behalf of all VCs everywhere, I absolutely agree. There is a lot as a community we investors need to do, and we have been slower than the founders would like. And I think 2022 is a great year to have that conversation, to push that conversation and that envelope forward. I am for sure going to write a couple of LinkedIn posts and maybe have this conversation over drinks with other VCs, and hoping this will become a tidal wave of positive action very quickly.
Oh, it'll be great, Vinit. Trust me, it'll be such a fresh air, which we will look at, coming from you guys.
Perfect. I wanted to say thank you so much to our esteemed panelists for making time. I think this has been a super interesting discussion. Maybe at some point we'll check in a year or two down the line and see if things have gotten better or not, and maybe we made some progress. But I want to say thank you all for joining today and for tuning into ET India Boardroom. Stay tuned for more.